Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you, and thank you all for being here. This is great. I have to tell you, first of all, I have a little bit of a cold, and so my mom told me that if I want to get rid of this, that I should shut up, which is really hard to do in my line of business. But also, she told me that when you sound like this, people have to really listen to you. So I hope I can count on that this afternoon. I am so grateful to be here. I can only imagine what some of the boardrooms, the chatter in the boardrooms must have been when the Blue-Green Alliance was formed. Oh my gosh, the workers are getting together with the environmentalists, and they're getting together with progressive corporations and with people, and they're going to organize. What will happen? And so what has happened is this alliance that we have here, and I am so excited by that, because as a ranking member on our House Science Committee, I have the dubious distinction of every week or so just sitting in and listening to some of my colleagues talk about how there's no such thing as climate change and that humans don't really have anything to do with that. And then on our Transportation Committee about how we really shouldn't have the federal government invested in things like our transportation infrastructure. But I'm here this afternoon because I know that we're in a room full of people who actually believe that, one, there's an important role for the federal government as a partner on investing in transportation. And we know that when you invest in transportation, not only do you create in all of our infrastructure, our water and our sewer infrastructure, not only do you create good jobs, you create great jobs, but they're all through every sector of the economy. And we also know that that's really connected to the way that we preserve and protect our environment. And so you all get that. And so you will have the challenge on Wednesday, I understand, of going over to Capitol Hill. And you can come by my office and get a refreshment or something. But go by those other offices and lobby them, if you will, please. There are those who also don't quite understand the challenges that we have. So I live here in the metropolitan Washington region. And even though we are not on the Chesapeake Bay, we actually understand that there are things that we do around our infrastructure that have a deep impact on that bay. It's why I've been a great champion of building and using green infrastructure techniques to preserve and protect our water supply. It's the reason that I am committed to public transportation and public transit as one of the ways to deal with our infrastructure needs, and why I'm committed to making sure that the kinds of materials and things that we use in rebuilding our roads and our bridges, one, that they are manufactured in the United States, but also that we're using infrastructure, that we're using materials that really help us preserve and protect our environment. And I understand that that then has a big impact on the quality of life for all of us in Maryland and in the region, but also for the safety and the health of our Chesapeake Bay. And I think our challenge is helping those of us who are all of us around the country, no matter what region we're in, to understand those same things. Now, I was appointed to the conference for our Water Resources Development Act. We have to reauthorize that. One of the issues that's actually come up is about environmental protections and under NEPA. And so I have been really fascinated by this idea that more public participation and vigorous public participation is a bad thing. And so I would urge you, as you're going around to offices, talking with members of Congress, helping them to understand that when we have public participation in these big projects, that it actually helps them go much better on down the line. You can be an important voice for that, for those things on Capitol Hill. I was sharing earlier that I have this real penchant for things like research and development. And part of it is not just because I'm so science smart or anything, but it's because I know that when the United States invests in research and development, especially around technologies that have to do with improving our infrastructure, around sustainability, around alternative and renewable sources of energy, that these kind of investments in research and development can be coupled with domestic manufacturing to create and grow jobs all throughout our communities. And I know that you all are so much a part of that. And so again, I would urge you to share with our colleagues that we don't just use the tax code because we think it's fun or because it's to benefit some of our elite, but we use the tax code so that we can create jobs and grow the economy for the middle class, and at the same time do the things that we need to protect our environment. Now, I happen to agree with some of my good friends, Ranking Member Sandy Levin and my good friend John Dingell, about the way to ensure that we don't, sort of push our way into a fast-track trade agreement that I think would undermine not only environmental protections and workplace standards, but would really undermine American workers. And so I have joined I want to be very clear about this because I think that Congress has a role when it comes to trade negotiations. We've had the experience of having gone through a couple of decades of living under the horridness that's happened in our economy and to our workers and in our environment because environmental and workplace standards have been eroded by trade agreements that really haven't benefited the American worker. And you know what? I think that when you make one mistake, the key is not to repeat it. And so I'm going to say very clearly to an administration that I admire, to a president that I admire, that any trade legislation that we consider this year in the United States House of Representatives has to be fully considered. And that means we're not fast-tracking anything through Congress. It's time for a slow walk. That we all have to be invested in promoting transparency, in strengthening United States enforcement and our competitiveness while we're authorizing trade adjustment assistance. Any trade deal needs to boost the United States manufacturing sector and create jobs here at home instead of sending them overseas. Lesson learned. And, there are some who say, well, we should just, I support our president and we trust our president, that we should just sort of trust through these trade negotiations. And you know what? I think that you should remind members of Congress that we have a constitutional responsibility to the people of the United States to review any of these trade deals, to ask questions about them, and to change them if necessary to protect U.S. workers, to protect our environment, and to protect our position in the world. That is the least that we can do as members of Congress. It's what we owe to those whom we represent. I represent the people of the 4th Congressional District. It is what we owe to every single American, and I think it's time for us to send that message, not just to our colleagues in the Congress and to our leadership, but also to send that same message to the White House. I plan to do that. And then lastly, this spring, our authority and our spending authority for transportation is basically about ready to run out of money. And so we have to create jobs by rebuilding all of our infrastructure. We know that there are 55,000, we hear these numbers, 55,000 bridges or so that are at failing grade or below. Every time I drive around the Beltway here around Washington, honestly, I look at those overpasses and actually I look up when I'm going under because I don't know what in the world is going to fall down on me. We also know that when you invest $1 billion in infrastructure, you probably create about 35,000 jobs all through the economy. It is time for us to make the investments in our infrastructure that our people deserve. Not only will it put all the workers back to work who've been out of work for so long in my district and across the country, but it actually will make us competitive. It will make us competitive in a global economy. When we can move our goods, transport our goods around the country and around the world, when we can make certain that our commuters are able to get to their jobs on time, when we can make certain that our water infrastructure is strengthened so that we're not experiencing water main breaks and things because we have 100-year-old pipes under the ground and we're poisoning our groundwater. All of these are things that we can do. We know that we can do them. Congress just has to have the courage and the wherewithal to do it. And I know that hearing from every single one of you, from every congressional district around the country, we can get the message. And so I will just finish by saying that when I travel over the Wilson Bridge outside of the city here or drive to the Eastern Shore on Route 50 or maybe a federal bridge or a highway, that it doesn't have a D or an R, a Republican or a Democrat written on that. It's just a road. And so I know that we can get this done. I know that you can get this done. And together, we're going to strengthen this economy. We are going to grow this economy, and we're going to strengthen American workers and protect our environment. One is not exclusive of the other. What the Blue-Green Alliance knows is that those things come together, and when they do, it's not only best for American workers, but it's really best for our economy. It strengthens us in the world, and you send the message the way that I can't even send the message to my colleague, that this is what we must do, it's what we need to do, and we can get it done. Thank you very much.